She was the orphan maid, completely invisible to him. He was her cold, billionaire boss, a man who owned everything. But a shocking secret was hiding in plain sight, a crimson birthmark that would shatter both of their worlds forever. This isn't just a rich man, poor woman story. It's about a destiny so unbelievable, it had to be true. Have you ever been so humiliated that you almost lost faith in humanity itself? That's where we meet Catherine Murray, living a life in the shadows. This is her story, and the story of Clifford Armstrong, the powerful man about to discover that the truth isn't buried in the past, it's been quietly cleaning his home all along. Get ready for a heart-aching drama fueled by a family secret and a plot twist that will redefine everything. We promise you an emotional journey of redemption that explores a very different kind of love story, one that reveals a shocking secret identity that was never meant to be found. The stakes couldn't be higher, as betrayal and heartbreak will push Catherine to her absolute limit before the life-changing surprise is finally revealed. To join this unbelievable journey and become part of a community that believes in destiny, comment with your first impression of this story. Like the video as a sign of support for Catherine. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope is never lost, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single moment of this incredible story. It was a day that started like any other, drenched in the quiet hum of duty. But for Catherine Murray, the orphan maid, it was the day her world tilted. Her boss, the notoriously cold Clifford Armstrong, was a man of sharp suits and even sharper glares. He was a phantom in his own home, a presence felt but rarely seen up close. On this day, however, a dropped tray and a clumsy fall changed everything. As he reached down to help her, his sleeve pulled back, revealing a secret. It was a shocking crimson birthmark, a splash of destiny identical to hers. For a moment, the air crackled with an unbelievable, unspoken question. Catherine froze, her own hidden mark suddenly burning beneath her uniform. This couldn't be real. It was the kind of drama you only read about in books. How could this powerful, distant man share something so intimately unique? It was a family secret she never knew existed, a puzzle she didn't have the pieces for. This man, her boss, was suddenly more than just a figure of authority. He was a mirror, reflecting a life-changing mystery she had to understand. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible sight before her. The world of the rich man and the poor woman had just collided in a shocking way. This wasn't just a coincidence, it felt like a plot twist orchestrated by fate. The crimson shape was a map to a past she'd never had, a connection she craved. Her heart pounded with a mix of terror and a strange, heart-aching hope. Was this the start of a new chapter, or just a cruel trick of the light? The surprise left her breathless, standing on the edge of an emotional cliff. Clifford, for his part, seemed just as stunned, quickly hiding his arm. He looked at the maid, really looked at her for the very first time. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, a confusion that mirrored her own. He saw not just a servant, but a young woman with a story in her gaze. The rigid mask of the powerful boss had slipped, if only for a second. He muttered a curt dismissal, but the damage to his composure was done. A seed of an unbelievable idea had been planted in both their minds that day. The encounter was over in a flash, but its impact would be everlasting. Catherine retreated to the solitude of her small room, her thoughts a whirlwind. She traced the outline of her own birthmark, a mark she had always seen as a flaw. Now it felt like a key, a clue to unlocking her own secret identity. This was more than drama, it was the beginning of a deeply personal love story. Not one of romance, but of belonging, of finding a piece of herself. Her life as a simple, forgotten orphan was, without a doubt, over. The mansion no longer felt like just a place of work, it felt like a stage. A grand, opulent stage where a heart-aching story was about to unfold. Every corner seemed to hold a new secret, every shadow a whispered promise. The destiny that had brought her here was finally starting to reveal its hand. The cold, imposing Clifford Armstrong was now at the center of her universe. She knew, with a certainty that shook her to her core, that nothing would ever be the same. A quiet maid's life was on a collision course with a powerful family secret. Catherine Murray's existence was a study in quiet hardship and invisibility. She was the orphan who had learned to move through life like a ghost. The grand Armstrong mansion, with its polished floors and silent halls, was her world. Here, she served with a diligence that rendered her part of the background. She was a pair of hands, a silent presence ensuring the household ran smoothly. To the powerful man who owned it all, she was less than a name. She was just the maid, a cog in the vast machinery of his opulent life. Her days were a loop of folding linens, polishing silver, and avoiding gazes. She found solace in small things: the scent of rain, a melody hummed under her breath. Life had taught her not to expect much, to find contentment in the shadows. The story of the rich man and the poor woman was one she knew by heart. She was firmly on one side of that divide, he on the other, an impassable chasm between them. Yet, she performed her duties without complaint, a testament to her resilient spirit. This quiet life, though hard, was the only one she had ever really known. She watched the lives of the wealthy unfold from a respectful distance. The laughter, the arguments, the casual display of immense privilege was all a show. A drama she was paid to witness but never, ever participate in. Catherine Murray knew her place, a lesson brutally taught by the orphanage. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask for more. Don't be a bother. So she perfected the art of being unseen, of blending in with the furniture. It was a survival mechanism that had served her well for years. Sometimes in the dead of night, she would allow herself to dream of more. A life where she wasn't just a servant, a place where she belonged. A family, a connection, a story that was truly her own to write. But these were fleeting fantasies, quickly dismissed by the morning light. The reality was her simple uniform and the endless list of chores. The hope of a different destiny felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She was an orphan, after all, and orphans learn not to wish too hard. The mansion itself was a symbol of everything she wasn't. It was old, full of history, with a lineage stretching back generations. Catherine, by contrast, had no history, no roots, no family secret to her name. Or so she thought. Her only heirloom was the crimson birthmark she kept hidden. A lonely mark on a lonely girl, a constant reminder of her unknown origins. It was the one truly personal thing she possessed in a life of service. A secret identity that, for now, meant nothing to anyone but her. Yet, despite the hardship, there was a quiet dignity to Catherine. She carried herself with a grace that belied her humble station as a maid. She wasn't broken by her circumstances, she was tempered by them. This inner strength would soon be tested in an unbelievable way. For even a ghost can be seen when the light hits it just right. And the quiet life she had so carefully constructed was about to be shattered. Destiny, it turns out, has little regard for the walls people build. Clifford Armstrong was a man forged in the fires of loss and success. He had built an empire from the ashes of a personal tragedy years ago. The world saw him as a titan of industry, powerful, decisive, and untouchable. But inside, he was a fortress with walls so high they blocked out the sun. He had hardened his heart to avoid ever feeling that kind of pain again. His success was his armor, his cold demeanor the shield that kept everyone out. He barely acknowledged Catherine, seeing her as nothing more than part of the furniture. She was just another uniform in a household full of them, a ghost in his periphery. The staff were there to serve a purpose, to maintain the perfect order he demanded. He didn't care about their names, their stories, or their silent struggles. To him, they were functional, replaceable parts of his well-oiled life. This detachment was a tool for efficiency, or so he told himself. It was easier than acknowledging the humanity of the people who served him, especially a quiet, unassuming orphan maid who rarely made a sound. His days were a blur of boardrooms, billion-dollar deals, and brutal negotiations. He moved through his mansion with the air of a king in his castle. The soft footsteps of the maid were just background noise, easily ignored. He never noticed the thoughtful way she arranged his desk or the care she took. This rich man was blind to the simple decency that existed right under his nose. His focus was on the future, on building a legacy of power and wealth. The past, and the family secret it held, was a locked room in his mind. This emotional distance had cost him dearly, though he wouldn't admit it. His relationships were transactional, his friendships alliances, his love life a merger. His fiancée, a woman from a similarly wealthy background, fit the corporate picture. She was a partner who understood assets and appearances, not affairs of the heart. This cold reality was the bedrock of Clifford's life as a successful boss. He had convinced himself that this was all he needed, that this was control. But a deep, gnawing loneliness was a debt he could never seem to pay off. He saw Catherine as a symbol of a world he had long left behind. A world of hardship, of struggle, of having nothing but your own two hands. It was a world he had escaped, and he had no desire to look back. The sight of the humble maid was a reminder of a vulnerability he despised. So he looked right through her, reinforcing the chasm between them. It was a deliberate act of ignorance, a way to protect his fragile peace. He had no idea that this poor woman held the key to his redemption. But fate has a funny way of forcing you to see what you refuse to look at. An unexpected event was about to disrupt his carefully controlled world. A small act of defiance, a quiet moment of integrity from the invisible maid. For the first time, Clifford Armstrong would be forced to notice the girl. The girl he thought was nothing more than a part of the scenery. And what he would see would be the first crack in his ironclad walls. A surprising plot twist was brewing in the silent corridors of his own home. The catalyst for change arrived in the form of a petty, venomous lie. A fellow staff member, jealous of Catherine's quiet competence, made an accusation. A valuable silver pen, a gift to Clifford, had suddenly gone missing from his study. The accuser, with a voice full of false concern, pointed the finger directly at the maid. "I saw her admiring it yesterday, Mr. Armstrong, the orphan girl. It was a cruel and calculated strike, designed to ruin her completely." The stage was set for a classic drama of the powerful boss and the powerless servant. Brought before Clifford, Catherine stood small but not broken in his grand office. He looked at her with an expression of cold disappointment, his mind already made up. "Is this true? Did you steal from me?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. The air was thick with tension, the accusation hung there like a guillotine. This was the moment she was supposed to crumble, to cry, to confess to a crime she didn't commit. But Catherine Murray was made of stronger stuff than anyone in that room knew. She was about to deliver a surprise that no one, least of all the boss, expected. Instead of pleading, she met his icy gaze with a calm, unwavering stare. "No, sir, I did not," she said, her voice soft but firm, without a hint of fear. She defended herself not with excuses or anger, but with a quiet dignity. She simply stated the truth, her integrity a shield against the venomous lie. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, holding her ground against the powerful man. This wasn't the reaction he expected from a cornered, guilty maid. For the first time, his curiosity was genuinely piqued by this mysterious orphan. He watched her, really watched her, as she stood there, falsely accused. There was no deceit in her eyes, only a profound and heart-aching sadness. He saw a strength that was utterly at odds with her humble position. In that moment, she wasn't just a faceless part of his staff anymore. She was a person, a woman of character being tested in the cruelest way. A strange, unfamiliar feeling began to stir within him, doubt. Doubt in the accuser, and a burgeoning respect for the accused. The accuser, sensing the shift, began to stammer and embellish the story. But the more they spoke, the more their lies began to unravel under Clifford's sharp gaze. He waved a hand, dismissing both of them with a thoughtful, stern look. "I will look into this," he declared, his eyes lingering on Catherine for a moment too long. It was a small victory, but for Catherine, it felt like a life-changing reprieve. She had spoken her truth, and for the first time, someone in power seemed to listen. This unexpected turn was a plot twist in the day's ugly drama. Clifford Armstrong returned to his desk, the missing pen forgotten. His mind was now occupied by the quiet, dignified maid and her surprising resolve. He had judged her like he judged everyone, based on her station in life. But her reaction had been unbelievable, challenging his preconceived notions. Who was this girl? This orphan who possessed more grace than anyone in his high society circle? A simple accusation of theft had done the impossible. It had made him see her. And that, as it turned out, was the beginning of his own path to redemption. The failed accusation only intensified the torment for Catherine Murray. Clifford's fiancée, Beatrice, a woman as beautiful as she was cruel, took notice. She saw the flicker of interest in her fiancé's eyes and despised the maid for it. Beatrice decided to make Catherine's life a living hell, a personal project. She began a campaign of relentless bullying, both subtle and overt. Accidents would happen: a spilled tray of drinks, a misplaced piece of jewelry. Each incident was designed to make the orphan look incompetent and untrustworthy. Catherine was relentlessly humiliated, often in front of other staff or guests. Beatrice would belittle her, making sharp, cutting remarks about her status as an orphan. One can't expect much from someone with no background, can they? She'd say with a smirk. The other staff, afraid of losing their jobs, would look away, offering no support. Catherine was utterly alone, an easy target for a woman threatened by her quiet grace. It was a painful, emotional ordeal, a daily dose of poison to her spirit. But even in the face of such cruelty, she refused to break. She endured the humiliation with a grace that was almost supernatural. She would clean up the messes, accept the blame for things she hadn't done. She would apologize softly, her eyes downcast but her spirit unyielding. She refused to compromise her integrity, to sink to Beatrice's level. This wasn't weakness, it was an unbelievable display of strength. She was playing the long game, one of survival, and she wouldn't be baited into a fight she couldn't win. This quiet resistance was a powerful act of defiance in its own right. What would you do in her shoes? Would you fight back or endure it silently? Be honest in the comments. Clifford, preoccupied with his business, was mostly oblivious to this domestic drama. He only saw the surface-level incidents, the clumsiness, the small mistakes. Beatrice would report them to him with feigned disappointment, painting Catherine as a problem. "Darling, I know you were curious about her, but she's just not fitting in." His initial respect for the maid began to waver, clouded by these new facts. He was being expertly manipulated, his own emotional distance making him an easy mark. The truth of the situation was a secret hidden right under his nose. Still, a part of him couldn't shake the image of her quiet dignity. There was a stark contrast between the maid's humble grace and his fiancée's petty cruelty. He started to notice the sly, triumphant glint in Beatrice's eye after each incident. A seed of suspicion, planted during the theft accusation, began to sprout again. Was it possible that this whole thing was a performance? A cruel theatrical production? The rich man was beginning to question the narrative being fed to him. He decided to observe, to watch the unfolding drama from the shadows. Catherine continued her work, her heart heavy but her resolve firm. She was more than just a maid, she was a survivor, and this was just another storm to weather. She held on to her values, her kindness, like a shield. She had been humiliated, but she was not without honor. This heart-aching display of resilience was not going unnoticed. The man she knew only as her boss was about to become a secret observer. And what he would discover would be a life-changing revelation. One quiet afternoon, Catherine was assigned a task in the old library. She was to carefully dust the shelves of old family photo albums, a job requiring a delicate touch. The room was filled with the ghosts of Armstrong's past, frozen smiles in sepia tones. As she worked, lost in thought, she began to hum a soft, simple tune. It was a forgotten lullaby from her earliest memories at the orphanage. A melody she hummed for comfort, a soothing balm for a lonely heart. She had no idea that this simple song was a key to a locked and painful memory. Clifford happened to be passing by the library, his mind on a difficult merger. He heard the faint melody drifting through the slightly ajar door. He stopped dead in his tracks, the papers in his hand suddenly forgotten. The lullaby hit him like a physical blow, a ghost from a lifetime ago. It was a tune he hadn't heard in decades, one he associated with unbelievable pain. It was the song his long-lost love used to sing before tragedy tore her away. A distant, painful memory was triggered, sharp and agonizingly clear. He pushed the door open slightly, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw the maid Catherine, her back to him, humming the tune as she dusted. How could she possibly know that song? It was their song, a secret melody. The coincidence was too shocking, too specific to be mere chance. A whirlwind of emotion, grief, confusion, anger surged through him. He felt a connection to this orphan girl that defied all logic and reason. This was a plot twist far stranger than any business deal had ever made. The lullaby was a relic from a chapter of his life he had sealed shut forever. The chapter that included a passionate, forbidden love story with a woman far below his station. A whirlwind romance that ended in heartbreak and a devastating secret. He had built his entire empire on the foundations of that loss, burying the man he used to be. Now this humble maid was excavating his past with nothing but a simple tune. It was a heart-aching and terrifying moment of reckoning for Clifford Armstrong. The walls he had built around his heart were beginning to tremble and crack. He backed away slowly, unnoticed, his mind reeling from the surprise. He retreated to his office, the melody now a deafening roar in his ears. This girl, Catherine Murray. Who was she? Where did she come from? The questions were suddenly urgent, vital, and deeply personal. He was no longer just curious about her, he was compelled to understand her. This was more than a simple drama, it was a collision of past and present. A family secret he thought was buried forever was showing signs of life. From that moment on, his perception of Catherine shifted dramatically. She was no longer just the maid who had shown surprising dignity. She was a living, breathing mystery, a puzzle he desperately needed to solve. The forgotten lullaby had awakened a part of him he thought was long dead. The part that could feel, the part that could love, the part that could be destroyed. The destiny he had tried to outrun was catching up to him in the guise of an orphan maid. His secret observation of her was about to become a full-blown investigation. The lullaby was the turning point, the moment observation turned into obsession. Clifford Armstrong began to secretly watch Catherine as she went about her duties. He used the security cameras in the mansion, his own private surveillance system. He observed her from afar, studying her movements, her expressions, her interactions. It was a strange new role for him, the powerful boss, now a hidden spectator. He was struck by the quiet kindness she showed to everyone and everything. He saw her calming a frightened dog, sharing a piece of her lunch with a gardener. This was in stark contrast to the greed and duplicity of his own social circle. His world was filled with people who were constantly scheming, positioning for power. His fiancée Beatrice was a master of the game, her kindness always conditional. But Catherine's honesty was simple, pure, and refreshingly real. It was a quality he hadn't encountered in a very, very long time. This poor woman, who had nothing, was richer in character than anyone he knew. It was an emotional and humbling realization for the hardened billionaire. He saw the subtle bullying she endured at the hands of Beatrice and other staff. He witnessed the accidents, the cruel whispers, the looks of disdain. And he saw how Catherine absorbed it all with that same unbelievable grace. She never retaliated, never complained, never lost her composure. She just carried on, her dignity her only shield against the constant attacks. He felt a growing sense of shame for having been so blind to the drama. And a powerful, protective instinct towards the young maid began to form. His respect for her deepened with every passing day of his secret watch. He was seeing the full picture now, not just the manipulated snippets Beatrice showed him. He saw a story of resilience, of integrity in the face of relentless cruelty. This wasn't just a maid doing her job, this was a remarkable human being. He felt a connection to her that went beyond the mystery of the lullaby. It was a heart-aching admiration for her unshakable moral compass. A feeling dangerously close to paternal affection started to take root. This new perspective made him reevaluate everything in his life. His business deals seemed hollow, his socialite friends shallow, his engagement a sham. Catherine, the orphan maid, had become his moral touchstone, a beacon of authenticity. She represented a world of genuine emotion he'd had long since abandoned. This was a life-changing period of introspection for Clifford Armstrong. He was starting to realize that his empire of wealth was built on a foundation of emotional poverty. And the key to his own redemption might just be this quiet, unassuming girl. He knew he had to find out more, to understand the mystery that connected them. But he couldn't just confront her, he needed more information, more proof. He decided to conduct a little test, a way to confirm the character he was witnessing. A subtle experiment to see if her integrity was as solid as it appeared. It was a calculated move from the seasoned boss, but the motive was now deeply personal. He was no longer just solving a puzzle, he was searching for a truth that could save him. The next act in this unbelievable drama was about to begin. The test was simple, yet it spoke volumes about the world Clifford lived in. He devised a subtle trap, a moral dilemma designed to reveal true character. One morning, he accidentally left his wallet on a table in the hallway. It was a path he knew Catherine Murray would cross while cleaning. Inside, he placed a large sum of money, now to be a life-changing amount for a poor maid. It was a silent question posed to the universe, and to her. Would greed win, or would the integrity Head observed hold true? Catherine, going about her morning chores, found the wallet exactly as Head planned. She opened it, only to find the owner's identification, her eyes widening at the cash inside. For a fleeting moment, a thought must have crossed her mind. That money could be her escape, a ticket out of this life of servitude and humiliation. It could be the start of a new life, far away from cruel fiancés and cold bosses. It was a powerful temptation, a destiny offered on a silver platter. The drama of the moment was hers and hers alone, with no one watching. Or so she thought. From his office, Clifford watched the scene unfold on his security monitor. His heart was in his throat, a feeling he wasn't accustomed to. He was betting on her character, staking his newfound hope on her next move. He saw her pause, look around, and then close the wallet with resolve. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing, only a clear sense of duty. It was an unbelievable display of honesty, happening in real time. The rich man watched as the poor woman made a choice that money couldn't buy. Let's be real for a second. If you found that wallet, what would you have done? Drop a comment and tell us the honest truth. She immediately took the wallet and marched directly to his study. She knocked softly, entered, and placed the wallet on his desk without a word. "You left this in the hall, Mr. Armstrong," she said, her voice steady. "I wanted to make sure it was returned to you right away." She didn't mention the money, didn't look for praise or a reward. She simply did what was right, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And in that quiet, heart-aching moment, his respect for her solidified into something unbreakable. He looked at her, a wave of emotion washing over him. This orphan, this maid who had been humiliated and mistreated in his own home. This young woman possessed a core of integrity so strong it was humbling. He had secretly tested her, and she had passed with flying colors. His growing respect for her character now bloomed into complete and utter trust. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he could trust this girl with anything. A powerful, life-changing bond of respect had just been forged between the boss and the maid. But this confirmation also brought a chilling realization. If Catherine was this honorable, then Beatrice was even more deceitful than had imagined. The foundation of his own life, his engagement, was built on a bed of lies. The plot twist wasn't just about the maid's goodness, it was about his fiancée's evil. He had been a fool, and his eyes were finally painfully open. The stage was now set for a final dramatic confrontation. And Catherine, unknowingly, was about to be caught right in the middle of it. The final act of cruelty from Beatrice was as brilliant as it was evil. She knew she was losing her grip on Clifford, sensing his shift in attitude. She saw the way he sometimes looked at the maid with a strange, thoughtful expression. Desperate, she devised a master plan, a final, undeniable frame-up. The target was a priceless family heirloom, a delicate locket. It had belonged to Clifford's long-lost love, the one he'd never gotten over. It was his most treasured possession, a symbol of a sacred, painful memory. The locket vanished from its velvet box in Clifford's private study. Panic and rage filled the mansion as the staff began a frantic search. Beatrice, playing the part of the concerned fiancée, expertly framed Catherine for the crime. She found a pawnshop ticket for the locket tucked under the mattress in Catherine's small room. She presented the evidence to Clifford. With a performance worthy of an Oscar, tears streamed down her face as she spoke of the maid's shocking betrayal. "I can't believe it, darling. After you were starting to trust her." The orphan. For Clifford, this was the ultimate betrayal, a knife to the heart. The locket wasn't just jewelry, it was the last piece of a tragic love story. The thought that Catherine, the one person had begun to trust, could do this was devastating. The evidence seemed undeniable, a physical manifestation of her deceit. All his newfound respect, his budding admiration, turned to ash in his mouth. He felt like a fool for believing in her, for thinking she was different. The emotional whiplash was brutal, leaving him heartbroken and feeling utterly betrayed. He summoned Catherine to his office, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. His voice was something far worse dead. "I trusted you," he said, the words dripping with ice. He slid the pawn ticket across the desk, a silent, damning accusation. Catherine looked at it, her face a canvas of pure, unadulterated shock. She tried to deny it, to explain, but he cut her off with a wave of his hand. "I don't want to hear your lies," he hissed. The trust between them shattered. This was the ultimate humiliation, a verdict delivered without a trial. She was being accused of desecrating a memory, of stealing a piece of his soul. The man she was beginning to admire, the boss who had shown her a flicker of respect. He now looked at her with pure hatred in his eyes. The drama had reached its terrible, tragic climax. For Catherine, it was an unbelievable nightmare from which she couldn't wake. Her quiet life had been destroyed by a phantom crime and a masterful lie. Faced with what he believed to be undeniable evidence, his decision was swift and brutal. He didn't just fire her, he wanted her erased from his life, from his home. "Get her out of my house." Now he ordered his head of security. He turned his back on her, unable to look at the girl who had so thoroughly broken his heart. This was a mistake of catastrophic proportions, a judgment he would live to regret. The plot twist, born from jealousy, had worked perfectly, and the consequences would be more life-changing than anyone could imagine. The words hit Catherine like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. "Get her out of my house." The command was cold, final, and absolute. She was dragged from the office, her pleas for him to listen dissolving into empty air. She was heartbroken, not just for the loss of her job, but for the loss of his trust. The man she was just beginning to see as more than a boss now saw her as a monster. She felt utterly betrayed, not by his actions, but by the injustice of it all. The evidence was a lie, a cruel fabrication, but her truth didn't matter. The other staff members watched in silence as she was escorted out. Some looked on with pity, others with a grim satisfaction. Beatrice stood in the doorway, a faint, triumphant smile on her lips. She had won. The orphan maid was being thrown out like garbage. Catherine was given no time to pack, no chance to collect her few meager belongings. She was pushed out the grand front doors with nothing but the uniform on her back. The doors slammed shut behind her, a sound of crushing finality. In one word, what emotion best describes Clifford at this very moment? Betrayed? Angry? Foolish? Tell us in the comments. The world outside the Armstrong mansion gates was suddenly a terrifying place. She stood on the pavement, alone and destitute, the city lights blurring through her tears. Her hope for a better life, a fragile dream she had dared to entertain. It had been seemingly crushed forever by the one man she was beginning to admire. This was the ultimate falsa derrota, the moment where all seemed lost. She was once again the orphan, cast out and unwanted, with nowhere to go. The humiliation was complete, a public spectacle for the world to see. This unbelievable turn of events felt like a cruel joke of destiny. She had endured so much only to be brought down by a crime she didn't commit. The injustice of it was a bitter pill to swallow, a poison in her soul. All she had was her integrity, and even that had been stolen from her. In the cold, unforgiving world, a good character was not enough to save you. This was the brutal lesson the rich man's world had taught the poor woman. It was a heart-aching portrait of utter despair. Clifford, locked away in his study, was a storm of conflicting emotions. He stared at the pawn ticket, the proof of her guilt, but it brought him no peace. He felt a strange and profound sense of loss, an emptiness that defied logic. Why did punishing her feel like he was punishing himself? The image of her shocked, innocent face was burned into his memory. A nagging doubt, a tiny voice of reason, began to whisper in the back of his mind. He had seen undeniable evidence, and yet his gut screamed that he was wrong. This was the climax of the drama, but the final plot twist was yet to come. Catherine Murray was at her lowest point, her spirit battered and bruised. And Clifford Armstrong, the powerful boss, was trapped in a prison of his own making. He had made a terrible, life-changing mistake, and a part of him already knew it. The path to redemption would have to begin with him confronting the ugliness of his own error. But for now, the two souls at the center of this story were broken and apart. One humiliated on the street, the other tormented in a gilded cage. Left utterly alone and destitute, Catherine wandered the city streets in a daze. The world she had known, confined but safe within the mansion walls, was gone. Now she was just another face in the anonymous, unforgiving crowd. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every stranger's glance a judgment. Her hope for a better life, which had flickered so brightly for a moment, was extinguished. It felt as if her destiny was to always be the orphan, forever on the outside. She had been crushed by the one man she was beginning to admire, and that was the cruelest cut of all. She found a temporary bed in a homeless shelter, a place of last resort. The nights were long and filled with the quiet desperation of others like her. During the day, she searched for any work she could find, no matter how menial. But with no references and the shame of being fired for theft hanging over her, it was impossible. She was branded, judged, and dismissed before she even had a chance to speak. The system was designed to keep people like her down, and it was working perfectly. The humiliation was a constant, heavy cloak she couldn't take off. The memory of Clifford's face, cold and full of hatred, haunted her dreams. How could he have believed it? After watching her, after testing her, the betrayal of his trust hurt more than the loss of her home and job. She had allowed herself a sliver of hope that he was different, a man of character. That hope now felt naive, a stupid fantasy for a poor woman to have. The love story she had imagined not of romance, but of fatherly acceptance was a lie. She had to face the reality that she was, and always would be, completely alone. This was the absolute bottom, the deepest valley of her young life. All the resilience she had built over the years was being tested to its breaking point. It would have been so easy to give up, to let the bitterness consume her, to become as hard and cynical as the world seemed to be. But even in this darkness, a tiny spark of her spirit refused to die. It was the same quiet dignity that had intrigued her boss in the first place. A strength she didn't even know she possessed was holding her together. She thought of the crimson birthmark, the secret she shared with him. What did it mean now? Nothing. It was just a coincidence, a cruel cosmic joke. It was not a sign of destiny, but a random mark that signified nothing. Any idea of a secret identity or a hidden family secret felt like a child's fairy tale. The real world was harsh, and there were no magical revelations or happy endings. At least that's what she tried to convince herself of, to numb the pain. But the heart-aching mystery of it all still lingered, a question without an answer. Catherine Murray's story seemed to be over, a tragedy with no final act. She was invisible again, but this time it wasn't a choice. She had been erased, forgotten, a ghost in a city that didn't care. Her one chance at a different life had been a complete and utter failure. But what she didn't know was that the man who cast her out was in his own private hell. And his journey, fueled by doubt and regret, was just beginning. A life-changing plot twist was brewing, far from the cold shelter floor. Back in the Armstrong mansion, a strange and hollow silence had fallen. Clifford was riddled with doubt, the victory over the supposed betrayal feeling empty. He would walk the halls and feel Catherine's absence like a missing limb. The house was clean, the routine was the same, but her quiet, dignified presence was gone. This strange sense of loss was illogical, and it infuriated him. Why should he care so much about a thieving maid, an orphan who had deceived him? His gut instinct, the one that had built his empire, was screaming that had made a terrible mistake. His fiancée Beatrice was celebrating her victory, becoming more arrogant by the day. She would openly mock Catherine, making cruel jokes about the little thief. One evening, while gloating, she let a crucial detail slip. She mentioned the exact time the pawn ticket was found, a time when she was supposedly out shopping. It was a small mistake, a tiny crack in her perfectly constructed lie. But for Clifford, who was now watching her every move with suspicion, it was a thunderclap. The seed of doubt blossomed into a full-blown, frantic investigation. He began to work backward, his brilliant business mind now focused on this domestic drama. He pulled the security footage from the day of the theft, this time ignoring the evidence. He watched the raw, unedited timeline of everyone's movements. And there it was, clear as day. Beatrice not out shopping, but sneaking near Catherine's room. He saw her slip inside for a few moments and emerge with a smug look of satisfaction. The proof of his fiancée's deception was undeniable, a shocking, gut-wrenching betrayal. He hadn't been betrayed by the maid, he had been betrayed by the woman he was supposed to marry. The weight of his error crashed down on him with unbelievable force. He had thrown an innocent girl out onto the street, humiliated her, destroyed her life, all based on a lie crafted by a jealous, cruel woman. The shame was a physical thing, a crushing weight on his chest. He had failed his own test of character, allowing his pride and past hurt to blind him. This was a life-changing moment of self-awareness, and it was horrifying. His path to redemption had just become a steep, treacherous mountain to climb. He confronted Beatrice, playing the security footage on a large screen. Her face went from triumphant to terrified as her deception was laid bare. Her excuses were pathetic, her pleas for forgiveness utterly meaningless. He saw her for what she was, a greedy, heartless parasite. He ended the engagement on the spot, ordering her out of his house and his life. But this act of justice brought him no satisfaction, only a deeper sense of guilt. Getting rid of the villain didn't undo the damage he had done to the hero. Now alone in his vast, empty mansion, Clifford was haunted by one thought: Catherine. He had to find her. He had to atone for his terrible mistake. It was no longer just about clearing her name or offering her a job back. It was about something much deeper, a connection he was only just beginning to understand. The memory of her face, the lullaby, the nagging feeling of familiarity. He was on the verge of a discovery that would be the biggest plot twist of his entire life. The unbelievable truth was just one memory away from being revealed. With Beatrice gone, Clifford frantically began piecing together the clues. His mind, now clear of deception, raced to connect the strange, disparate dots. It started with the lullaby, that haunting, familiar melody. Why would an orphan from a city shelter know a song so personal to him? A song he had shared only with his first love, a woman he believed was gone forever. It was a statistical impossibility, a coincidence so profound it couldn't be one. The mystery of Catherine Murray was deepening with every passing second. Then he thought of her age. He did a quick, desperate search of her employment records. She was 21. He did the math, his hands beginning to shake. 21 years ago was when his world had fallen apart, when his secret love, pregnant with their child, had disappeared after a terrible fight. He had been told she died, a story fed to him by his disapproving family. He had believed them, burying his grief under a mountain of work and ambition. But what if that too had been a lie, a cruel family secret? And then came the final gut-wrenching piece of the puzzle. A memory he had suppressed for 2 decades, a detail lost in the fog of his pain. He remembered the day his child was born, a secret birth in a small clinic. He remembered holding his baby girl for only a few moments before she was whisked away. And he remembered the doctor pointing out a small, unique mark on her skin. A crimson birthmark, the doctor had said, shaped just like a fallen leaf. An unbelievable, shocking, earth-shattering realization hit him with the force of a hurricane. The birthmark. It was always about the crimson birthmark. The mark he had seen on the maid's arm was identical to his own. The same mark that had been on his newborn daughter all those years ago. Catherine Murray, the orphan maid he had humiliated and thrown into the street. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be true. But it was. She was his daughter. The secret identity she never knew was that she was an Armstrong. The truth of her identity was the most unbelievable plot twist he could have ever imagined. The emotional impact was devastating, a mixture of profound joy and crushing guilt. He had a daughter, a living, breathing daughter with his eyes and her mother's spirit. And he had treated her like dirt, casting her aside without a second thought. He was not just her boss, he was her father, and he had failed her in the most catastrophic way. This was a drama of his own making, a tragedy born from years of willful ignorance. The story of the rich man and the poor woman was in fact the story of a father and a daughter he never knew he had. This life-changing revelation gave him a new, desperate purpose. He wasn't just seeking to right a wrong anymore, he was seeking to reclaim his family. To find the daughter he never knew he had and beg for her forgiveness. This was his one and only chance at redemption, at healing a wound 21 years old. He had to find her, no matter the cost, no matter how long it took. The search for Catherine Murray was no longer about making amends. It was about rebuilding a life from the rubble of the most heart-aching secret of all. Overcome with a tidal wave of guilt and desperation, Clifford launched his search. He poured his entire empire's resources into the effort, a massive citywide manhunt. Private investigators, public advertisements, generous rewards offered for any information. He spared no expense, his obsession to find Catherine becoming his sole focus. He was no longer the cold, calculating boss, he was a desperate father. A father racing against time to undo the most terrible mistake of his life. The search was a frantic emotional plea to the universe for a second chance. Days turned into a week, and every lead went cold, every trail ran dry. The city that had once seemed so small now felt like a vast, endless ocean. Catherine had vanished without a trace, swallowed by the anonymous streets. With every passing hour, Clifford's despair grew deeper. What if she was hurt? What if she was in trouble? What if he was too late? The guilt was a relentless tormentor, whispering his failures in his ear. He had thrown his own daughter away, and he might never get her back. He visited every homeless shelter, every soup kitchen, showing her picture to anyone who would look. He, Clifford Armstrong, the billionaire titan, was now walking among the city's forgotten. He saw the world Catherine had been cast into, a world of hardship and quiet desperation. It was a humbling and heart-aching experience, stripping away his pride. He was finally seeing the life of the poor woman, not as a concept, but as a harsh reality. And the knowledge that his daughter was lost somewhere in it was unbearable. This was his penance, his journey through the hell he had created for her. The search became the city's biggest drama, a story splashed across the news. Billionaire hunts for fired maid. The headlines were sensational, but they didn't know the half of it. They didn't know the secret of the birthmark, the unbelievable family secret. They didn't know this wasn't about an employer's regret, it was about a father's love. Clifford ignored the media circus, his focus laser-sharp on the only thing that mattered. Finding his daughter was his singular mission, his only hope for redemption. He would not, could not, give up. Finally, after weeks of agonizing searching, a breakthrough came. An old woman who ran a small diner on the outskirts of the city recognized Catherine's photo. She said the girl had been working there for a few days, washing dishes in the back. She was quiet, sad, but a hard worker, the woman had said. Hope surged through Clifford, a powerful, life-changing wave of relief. He had a location. He had a chance. The end of the search was in sight. Destiny had given him one last opportunity to fix his broken story. He drove there himself, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. What would he say? How could he possibly explain? Would she even listen? He knew he deserved her hatred, her rejection, her anger. But he had to try. He had to tell her the truth of her identity. He parked the car, took a deep breath, and prepared for the most important confrontation of his life. The rich man was about to face the poor woman he had wronged. But this time, he would be approaching her not as a boss, but as her father. Clifford found Catherine in the back of a greasy diner, washing a mountain of dishes. She looked tired, worn down, a shadow of the resilient woman he had come to admire. Her hands were raw, her eyes were empty, and for a moment, his courage failed him. Seeing her in this menial job so far beneath her was a knife in his gut. This was his fault. He had done this to her, to his own daughter. The guilt was so overwhelming he could barely breathe. This heart-aching scene of hardship was the direct result of his actions. He called her name Catherine, his voice thick with an emotion she had never heard from him. She turned, and her eyes widened in shock, a dish slipping from her soapy hands and crashing to the floor. Fear, anger, and confusion washed over her face. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling but defiant. "Have you come to humiliate me some more?" The entire diner staff turned to watch the unbelievable confrontation. A billionaire boss in a tailored suit standing in their humble kitchen. "No," he said, taking a step closer, his own eyes welling with tears. "I came to beg." It was a word no one had ever associated with Clifford Armstrong. He began to confess, the words pouring out of him in a desperate, broken torrent. He told her about Beatrice's deception, about the security footage, about his terrible mistake. "I was a fool, blinded by pride. I am so sorry for what I did to you." But he knew that apology wasn't enough. It didn't explain the depth of his regret. He had to show her the truth, the whole shocking, life-changing truth. In a tearful public move that stunned everyone, he unbuttoned his cuff. He rolled up his sleeve, exposing his own crimson birthmark for all to see. "This is why I was a fool," he said, his voice cracking. "Because I should have known." He looked her straight in the eye, his soul bare. "I should have recognized my own daughter." The words hung in the air, a shocking revelation that silenced the entire diner. Catherine stared at his arm, then at him, her mind struggling to process the impossible. What one word describes this exact moment? Shocking? Emotional? Unbelievable? Let us know in the comments. The plot twist was finally out in the open, a family secret revealed in the most public of ways. Catherine's knees felt weak, and she leaned against the sink for support. "Father," the word echoed in her mind, a foreign concept she had never dared to dream of. This cold, powerful boss. This rich man. He was her father? All the pieces clicked into place: the lullaby, the strange connection, the identical birthmark. It was the answer to every question she had ever had about who she was. Her entire secret identity, revealed in a single heart-stopping moment. Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of overwhelming, confusing emotion. He was her father. The man who had caused her so much pain was her blood. Clifford stood before her, stripped of all his power and pride, a father begging for forgiveness. This wasn't about a boss and a maid anymore. This was about family. It was the beginning of their true love story, a story of reunion and redemption. The most unbelievable surprise of her life had just been delivered, and her destiny was about to change forever. The reversal was as stunning as it was swift, a life-changing turn of events. After the tearful confrontation, Clifford didn't just apologize, he acted. He brought Catherine home, not as a maid, but as the cherished daughter she was. He called a press conference, standing before the world's media. With Catherine by his side, he told the entire unbelievable story. He confessed his mistakes, exposed Beatrice's lies, and revealed the family secret. He held up his arm, showing his birthmark, a public declaration of his paternity. He introduced Catherine Murray to the world not as a former servant, but as his sole heir. The news sent shockwaves through the city's elite and the business world. The story of the orphan maid and the billionaire boss became a modern-day fairy tale. It was a drama of redemption that captivated the hearts of millions. Catherine, once humiliated and cast out, was now embraced and celebrated. She handled the sudden fame with the same quiet grace and dignity she had always possessed. She was no longer the poor woman, she was the long-lost daughter, finally home. Clifford showered her with the love and belonging of the father she had finally found. He spent every moment trying to make up for 21 years of lost time. He taught her about the business, not as a successor, but as a partner. He listened to her stories of growing up in the orphanage, his heart aching with regret. It was a heart-aching and emotional journey of two strangers becoming a family. The cold, empty mansion was filled with laughter and warmth for the first time in years. This was the true beginning of their love story, built on forgiveness and a shared destiny. Catherine, in turn, began to heal the broken parts of her father. Her kindness and integrity brought a new, humanizing perspective to his corporate empire. She encouraged him to start charities, to use his immense wealth for good. She taught him to see the people around him, not just their job titles. She was the catalyst for his redemption, helping him become the man he was always meant to be. It was a surprising plot twist. The orphan didn't just get a father, the father got a savior. Their reunion was a life-changing event for both of them. The world watched as the Armstrong story continued to unfold. Catherine Murray, once defined by her status as an orphan and a maid, now defined her own legacy. She became a powerful advocate for orphans and the underprivileged. She used her newfound platform to give a voice to the invisible, the forgotten. She turned her past pain into a source of unbelievable strength and compassion. She was living proof that one's beginnings do not have to determine one's destiny. Her story became a beacon of hope for people everywhere. In the end, it was the crimson birthmark that had brought them together. A small, insignificant mark that turned out to be a map leading home. It was the symbol of their secret identity, the proof of an unbreakable bond. The journey had been filled with pain, drama, and shocking surprises. But it had led them here, to a place of healing, love, and redemption. The father had found his daughter, and in doing so, he had finally found himself. Their story was complete, a testament to the unbelievable power of forgiveness. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a rich man and a poor woman. It was a powerful reminder that our true identity isn't defined by our circumstances, but by the love we're willing to fight for and the forgiveness we're brave enough to give. It proves that sometimes, the smallest mark can lead us to the biggest discoveries about who we are. If you also believe that everyone deserves a second chance and that destiny has a funny way of revealing the truth, then you've found your community. This is what we're all about. Subscribe to our channel and join a family that celebrates stories of hope and redemption. Now let's make this story heard. Like this video as a vote for forgiveness and to spread this powerful message across YouTube. In the comments below, answer this question: what was the most emotional moment for you in Catherine's journey? And finally, share this video with one person who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to find where you belong. And while you wait for our next story, know that our channel is a treasure chest of emotional journeys just like this one. Explore our other videos to discover more unbelievable tales that will touch your heart. To make sure you don't miss the next incredible story we're getting ready to tell, activate the notification bell right now. You won't want to be left out of the next emotional roller coaster we have in store for you.